Unlock the path to healing with Exposed podcast. Join us as therapists from around the world break mental health taboos, share powerful stories, and provide insights that transform lives. Tune in, educate, and thrive.
I really think that knowing that the mind and the body are not separate, they're actually interlinked, and helping others understand that. And knowing that the power really lies within us, Yes, we do need mentoring sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's really us who's the key to any change that we need to make.
Welcome, everyone, to Expose podcast. Please help me to welcome our guest from Australia, Shradha Haria. She is an occupational therapist, chronic illness recovery coach, and Mind-Body and Lifestyle Facilitator. Shradha is the founder of Lifability, where she combines the principles of the Eastern and the Western medicine to help clients from around the world to improve their quality of life. With her mission to inspire purposeful living, Shradha emphasizes grounding techniques and practices and awareness of habits and beliefs. She is dedicated to supporting those with chronic mental and physical health conditions, guiding them toward a more fulfilling life. Thank you so much, Shradha. Could you share with us what made you interested in combining those both medicines, the Western and the Eastern, and a little bit about you?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here, Anastazja. So a little bit about me. I started my occupational therapy journey and then sort of felt like there was something missing. And I've always been interested in functional medicine. And I wasn't really inclined to go and study medicine on top of, obviously having completed a 4-year degree. But I really wanted to see how I could utilize some of that information. And so, I kind of got in touch with lots of different aspects from the functional medicine side of things. And then it led me to a journey of kinesiology, where I guess explored a little bit more about traditional Chinese medicine. And then I've also had some inspiration come through to me to understand Ayurveda and how that had an impact on just our lifestyle and our well-being, really. And so I've reached a point where I've realized that we've got this knowledge from centuries, really, and it's so useful yet not known, or if it's known, it's just not as utilized as it should be. And I'm a firm believer that medication isn't the answer. Like, medication is a band-aid, and if we can understand the root cause, then we're more likely to achieve better outcomes over a longer time. And so, I really think that knowing that the mind and the body are not separate, they're actually interlinked, and helping others understand that. And knowing that the power really lies within us, Yes, we do need mentoring sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's really us who's the key to any change that we need to make.
The word which came to me when you were saying is the balance, that balance, the equilibrium. When we are out of balance, out of the homeostasis, what are some of some of the ways to bring us back to feel clarity, to feel focus, and to get in touch with ourselves. Could you share some of the techniques you are using with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is always trying to find a place of quiet, right? When we're out of balance, we're generally busybodies and we're maybe meeting some of our needs, but we're meeting a lot of other people's needs. And so when I say a place of quiet, I don't mean going and being in a Zen sit down meditation, because as a busybody, that's very hard to do initially. I absolutely think that it has humongous benefits if we can do that. But what I would recommend is find a place in nature, whether you go for a little walk or you use that as a social outing, whatever it is, but actually tune in to nature itself and listen to the things that are happening around you, whether that's water from a waterfall, whether that's the wind blowing and the leaves rustling, whether it's the birds chirping. It's just being present, just trying to be present within whatever environment that you're in. And we've got nature all around us. So even if you're living in a capital city, there will be a little part that has a bit of bushland, and just go and spend a little bit of your time there. I mean, the other thing that I would highly recommend is find an activity that you really enjoy. Where do you feel like you've got this feeling of joy and this feeling of freedom? And go and go and engage in that and just see what happens for you. And then, that's just the starting point. So as you start doing that, you start getting answers.
And what's next when you start connecting with yourself in your journey of being therapist? What did you come across? What is the biggest challenge people have when that they're doing all that process which you mentioned? What tends to be their biggest challenge to overcome?
I think self-compassion.
Self-compassion. Wow.
I find that when we get into this space where we start becoming aware, of various things that are going around us, or, why we might be feeling certain things, we then start to beat ourselves up. And we'll often find that when we can't accept, or when we're struggling to accept what's going on around us, we then put those external pressures in our outside world. And so what I've found is when we can actually just sit with those feelings, sit in that discomfort. And it doesn't have to be something that we do for hours and hours, it's just going back to it every now and again, spending 5 minutes in your day, just sitting in that discomfort and being okay with what that feeling is. And that's a difficult process. It's something that you get better at the more you do. But yeah, I definitely think self-compassion's a big challenge. And then after that, what would come is trying to break free from what you're used to creating a new normal. And that can bring lots of feelings of doubt, loneliness. Is this really it? And it's realizing that for any growth to happen, there needs to be a little bit of discomfort that we have to feel at some point. And it's really important to remember that life's full of duality. We're not going to have all the good without the bad. It helps us.
And what if we can play with the bad and make it kind of good a little bit, like change that perspective of, play with the different archetypes we have, from the victim of, oh, this is so bad, it happened to me, to like, okay, what about my magician or my lover, or like I found it in my own healing, not being so rigid and just more being playful. It really helped me to, I think, calm down my nervous system and almost feel like more in flow. But let's talk about fear. What would you say to someone who is, maybe they want to start a new job or a new relationship, and they don't know, they don't trust themselves maybe because of some previous mistakes, and maybe they need to be perfect, or maybe they need to get their things right, or maybe there is some fear. And I'm making this question because I feel like through centuries, we all are experiencing this amazing feeling of fear. How do you alchemize it? How do you deal with fear when it comes up?
Yeah, fear is a very interesting concept, right? It's like, it's known as false sense appearing real.
Yeah, false.
Mhm. Yeah, and so when you are feeling this feeling of fear, it's really trying to understand it, like what is this fear about? Because fear might be something that we initially feel, but underlying that, there's something else going on. And so, is it about, if you don't get this job and if you don't do well, your self-worth will be impacted? Or is it about that, you don't get this role that you're wanting and you're not going to be able to feed your family and you're not going to be able to nourish? Like, what is it about? And start to understand that and shifting your perception around that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, what I understood is there's something behind that, and we're trying to protect that, and just going deeper. In your work as a therapist, what are some of surprising things you have seen, or lessons you have learned, or patterns you have noticed as a scientist in the same time, which you maybe you want to share? If not, I can go to the next question. I can edit that.
No, I think for me, it's interesting you asked me that question, because I guess I've been pondering over that for a little while, and because of the person that I'm and the way that I work, I might have, or I might be working with certain people that may have, similar diagnosis, or maybe a few things that are similar in their historical information, but the way that each individual ticks is different. And so understanding like what their motivation is and what's driving their behaviors as an individual, that's where I feel like, you know, the gem is. And so if you were to ask me what patterns that I see, it's actually just understanding what's someone's motivating behavior.
And is it always going to some kind of trauma? Like it's in your work, when you work with your clients, is it always behind that mechanism some traumatic events or what else?
Yeah, well, you know how Gabor Mate talks about the small T and the big T, right?
Oh no,
And
never heard that. No.
oh, haven't you? Okay, so do you know Gabor Mate?
Yeah.
Okay, so he talks about you know, everybody having either a little traumatic incident or a big traumatic incident, right? And trauma isn't really about the incident, it's about the way we perceive the incident, right? So we might be in the same room, but the way I perceive what's happening might be completely different from how you might perceive what's happening. And so what then happens is that perception is instilled in our body. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be something where, you know, someone's going through, you know, some sort of an abusive situation, whether it's sexual trauma, physical abuse, you know, seeing death, whatever it is. It could be as simple as someone saying no to you when you're little, right? And you felt rejected and you felt like what you were saying wasn't important enough. And then that carries on and stays with you. So a lot of the times, you know, when we're having experiences that are that we're finding really difficult to manage and to navigate, a lot of the times it's about that little person and working with that little person, you know, little Anastazja, little Shradha, whoever it is, and understanding what are their needs in that moment, you know. And I always say bringing the focus back on us, because a lot of the times, you know, we will, when something's happening in our external environment, we'll start blaming everything else, you know, because that's easier to do than to look at our own behaviors.
And why is that? Why it's easier to see it outside? Is it our ego? Or what's there else?
Why is it easier to see what's happening externally than internally? Yeah, I would agree with you that there is some aspects to the attachment of our ego, but there's also, you know, there's this concept of when we're doing certain things with someone external, there is a need that's being met. So it could be a need, for example, we feel helpful, you know, we feel needed by someone else. And so we keep we keep putting ourselves in a situation which might not be healthy for us, but we keep putting ourselves in that situation because we think subconsciously that if we're there and if we're helping this person work through whatever they need to work through, you know, it's like we'll feel like a hero in their journey. So that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is it's easier to focus on someone else because doing the work and sitting through that discomfort brings up a lot of uncomfortable feelings. Whereas when we blame something on somebody else or an event, or it's like, oh, okay, we're not taking responsibility for this. But in the end, that doesn't really work. Over a long time, that doesn't really work.
Why is it that we keep repeating those cycles looking for that solution? I mean, it's called like reconciliation. Why is that driving us? We hear about the familiarity and that brain keeps us safe, but still, even you would think knowing it will make it less, but it doesn't sometimes. You can go through therapy and know it and repeat those cycles, and it's
And what you're saying right now, it's you can know something, but to feel something is completely different, right? And so, our brain is made up of our conscious and subconscious. Yeah, and the subconscious patterning generally happens between 0 and 7. Doesn't mean that we can't form new subconscious patterns. We can, right? Through awareness and repetition and habit formation. But what happens is we can know something, which is the conscious brain, but to feel it needs to come from that subconscious brain. And a lot of the times, the results or the actions that are happening are a result of our subconscious brain.
That makes me I know, I mean, I understand that people have to go through a lot of therapy to actually change those results, but who knows, maybe some people can make some quantum leap right now listening to you and get some eye-opening insight. I want to ask, where I'm going with this is I want to ask not why, how people change, because you just mentioned it's the awareness, repetition, and the third one I forgot. But I want to ask you some advice to someone who wants to quit something. Either it's some habit they don't like, whatever it is. What advice, practical advice would you give? And if there is some, proof of that or in the research that really works.
Yeah, so to quit a habit, you need to replace it with a different habit. Yeah, you can't quit and expect to just walk away from something. It's like you need to find something that's going to replace what you're trying to quit. But before you even do that, it's important to understand what need that habit's meeting. Yeah. So if you can understand what need that habit's meeting, and you can try doing that by yourself, by just asking yourself and being truly honest with yourself. And sometimes it's a lot harder to do that, and that's why you may need to be supported with a therapist to unpack that. But I would say, even if you start journaling about it, start writing about it, like, I do this. What do I like about this? What do I like about myself when I do this? And then you can start unpacking what need that's meeting. Yeah. And so when you can unpack the need that it's meeting, you can then find something else that might meet the same need, but might be a healthier habit. And then secondly, when we're looking at replacing the habit with something else, you need to make that new habit easy to achieve. Yeah. So it could be something like, for example, let's say you want to start going to the gym, right? And you kind of your current pattern is you wake up, you lays in bed for maybe half an hour to 45 minutes. And then you kind of, hop out of bed and then start your day. So you want to add gym or, some form of activity into that routine. So what you could do is you could maybe laze for 15 minutes, get up, and just start off with, doing a couple of things beside your bed, whether it's squats or push-ups or whatever it is, put a timer on for 5 minutes. Yeah. The other thing could be, at the end of the day, have your gym shoes ready with you in the car and just drive to the gym, and just walk into the gym with your gym shoes. That's all you've got to do. And then, go back into the car. You don't need to do your session there. But you'll realize that once you're already there, you want to do maybe at least 5 minutes. Half the battle is actually getting there. So if you can figure out how to get there and make that happen, the rest is a lot easier. So yeah, two key things, about changing your habits is find out what need that habit's meeting. And secondly, replace that with something else that you want and make it easy to replace it.
I love that. And it almost those baby steps of like, instead of focusing on like what's on my way, just what's the first step I do, and just being in the moment, getting the shoes on and getting to that place. It can
Absolutely. It's all about small steps, Small steps are probably going to last a much longer time than you go into the gym for a week or you starting a new diet for a week and then bang, we're back to the same. And that goes back to, when I was talking about the conscious and subconscious patterning. We can think about doing something, which is our conscious brain, and we can do it for a little bit. But what will happen is soon enough, our subconscious brain will realize, hang on, that's not our normal. So it'll go back to doing what it was doing, which was not going to the gym, which was not being on that diet. And so it's really working out, how do we change the subconscious patterning to start realizing that this is normal? And you can only do that by small incremental changes. And I'm not saying that there aren't people that, have been smoking and they've just stopped smoking and never smoked for the rest of their life. There are things and there are people that can do that. But a lot of the times, if you really want to see consistent change and want it to be a long-term change, then I would say let's start small. Let's start running a marathon and not a race.
So it's interesting what you said, because there is something maybe you can, if you feel like, share your perspective on it, that sometimes you do something so good that you surprise yourself, and then the next day it feels like hangover, like emotionally you are like drained,
Mhm,
because it's so much not what you used to do, and
mhm.
it's like almost your subconscious is like, this is not who you are, go back, go back. So
Yeah, correct.
it, does it make sense, and what to do when you're actually, you know, achieve something great, something great happens, you perform, just you amaze yourself, and then the next day you are like, oh, like you don't know, you just, it's just the opposite. It feels like, what to do with that hangover energetically, emotionally, and is it going
Yeah,
to be less? Is it going to be less? Because you mentioned the solution is baby steps, like doing it a little, and a little, instead of jumping. But then, yeah, I hope that makes sense.
yeah, I think it's also important to listen to what your body. So your body's telling, like, you call it a emotional hangover, and it's important to listen to. Okay, your body's telling you you need to rest. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So rest doesn't necessarily mean going back to that old habit. Yeah. Rest can mean, okay, you know what? Today I'm not going to do a workout, but I'm still going to go to the gym. Yeah, I'm just going to have a little walk around the gym and walk out. So you're still maintaining the habit in your brain of I am actually going to the gym, but I've listened to what you're telling me that I feel really depleted today. So I'm just going to go there and come back.
Mm. That totally makes sense. Thank you, um, for making this point that, it might be just taking some rest and trusting that, uh, that's the kind of cycle that there is. It's not going to be like every day, like, great, and me feeling the same way, which I feel like many of us, there's this expectation that I'm supposed to feel a certain way every day and perform certain way every day. And I feel like for us, as we have menstruation and all that comes in cycles, I love what you are doing with the connecting the both Western and Eastern culture, because I feel like there is some deep wisdom with that. Um, Understanding and reading your body, like, this is the time I'm more productive, I'm going to do this, and this is the time I need to rest. And realizing that maybe part of me working so hard is just running away from just being still and not doing anything.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You went really deep, and I love how you talk about, the baby steps. I really like the idea of, that you actually spoke about it, that sometimes, like, when we are changing a habit or changing ourselves, then there is this feeling, oh, this is not, whatever it is, it could be financially, we start to make more money than anybody in our family. It feels like, whoa, like almost you feel like you start to don't want to spend that money, which doesn't make sense. It's like, so let's say financially it can happen in relationships, or probably in any area. So, and realizing that, that's I believe there is probably some neural pathways creating that time in your brain, a new neural pathways maybe. Is that true? Like when we create a new habit and they're not strong enough, so maybe they kind of there's some fluctuation and we feel like this is not subconsciously yet established, and the more we do it, the more neural pathways come. Is can we say it happens like that?
Yeah, correct. Like the neural pathways are being formed, but they're not strongly linked, right? So we adapt to our old way of being. It could be like, we've finally starting to financially, double our income, but because we're not used to that, we go and spend it all, subconsciously. And so we're back to square one. And so, I go back to that concept of a conscious brain, subconscious brain, and the link with the body, and so for us to have different results, we really need to be able to transfer our way of being and doing things into our subconscious brain.
And for sure, anyone who's listening and your message vibrates with them, they can find you. And we're going to talk about your website and what you're doing. But I have one more question related to chronic pain. What advices would you give to someone who has a chronic pain? Is there any emotional, psychological way to feel less of the pain or totally release it?
Yeah. So chronic pain is a very interesting area, but it's also it's not an answer that I can, like, it's not a one-off answer. Chronic pain, it's about what kind of pain is it? Where is the pain? What are we feeling about the pain? What is it stopping us from doing? And so the way I can address it right now is, I guess, just coming back to listening to your body. Like, what is your body telling you? Is it certain movements that you're doing that are exacerbating that pain? Or is that pain constantly there? If it's like a dull ache all the time, like just going back to some of that traditional Chinese medicine knowledge, what is that about? What are we not emotionally discussing or expressing?
There is, of course, when you said that, it came up something else. The question of your thoughts. I'm just curious about your thoughts as you study both the Western and Eastern culture and how they differently look at the body and emotions. Do you see any connection between the chronic illness and our emotions, like or trauma or whatever, however you call
Yeah, 100%.
it?
100%. And I, firmly believe that when we are not listening to our emotional being, our body then presents it in the physical form. So this is where we start having physical symptoms. So yeah, the root of all physical manifestation of illnesses does come back down to our emotions, and comes back to the relationship that we have with ourselves at the end of the day.
So let's say somebody struggles with cancer and and they feel, no, I don't have any, mental, like I'm fine, and they look outside fine. Like, is it possible that actually they didn't have any, everybody has trauma, but like you said, everybody respond different, so they kind of went out without, how would you call it? Like, they don't get triggered. Basically, they just live their life, and it looks like they're healthy. But they could it. What would you say to somebody who might want to try therapy or working with you or therapists as a way to heal the cancer? If they don't feel like they really have trauma, could it be that there is still some layer, something stuck from the past? Or I know it's a question which is a little like in the air, but I would like to ask you this question.
Yeah, well, I think the way I would respond to that is because a lot of people, when you use the term trauma, the way they relate to that is like a negative connotation, right? And so I wouldn't even necessarily use the word trauma, but I would start to ask questions about, so this cancer has developed, and get into their feelings about that, so how do they feel with this new realization of this new diagnosis, and then start unpacking it from there. Because the way they talk about something will help a therapist or myself understand what may be underlying this. And then we start digging backwards and seeing, what's been going on in their life and how have they been presenting themselves. And then we can start to unpack from there.
Thank you. That was a pleasure to have you with us. Is there anything else you feel inspired, you feel, to add to our audience? If not, that's totally okay. I like to, we can be silent for a minute.
I think all I'd like to say is start becoming true with yourself, start becoming authentic. Because the life that you want for yourself awaits you. You just have to start listening and taking small actions towards that desired life.
If I was a DJ, I would put like a your company name is Lifability. Could you share where the name is coming from, and a little about the mission of it and your future goals? What do you want to do in the future? What's your vision?
Yeah, interesting. So Lifability, the way that came about, it's an interesting story because it relates to, so if you look at the logo has a bit of a sun attached to it, and that's come from my relationship with my cousin that I'm very fond of, who has cerebral palsy, and I wanted to do something in relation to that, and wanted to use him as an inspiration for me as I keep going through this journey, in the, I guess, entrepreneurial business world. And the mission with Lifability is really about, helping others to create their desired life. I've got a podcast where I have guest speakers on there, and it's really about wellness and, providing bite-sized strategies that people can start utilizing, but also becoming aware of, what's out there, because, a lot of the times we only know what we know, right? And I'm really inspired to, let the world know that there are answers for you. You just got to spend a little bit of time with yourself and the answers will come. So I've got the Lifability podcast. I think the Lifability audit free resource that I have on my website is really useful. It allows people to get a better understanding as to where they are at in different parts of their life, because you've got to remember that our life is made up of different components. We've got our physical health, we've got our emotional health, we've got our financial health, we've got our relational health, and so it's important to know how we perceive ourselves in these different areas, because any change begins with awareness. And yeah, you can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube's slowly starting to come on too now. So, if you're wanting to see a little bit more of me and what I do, then yeah, YouTube will probably be a platform that you can utilize also.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shradha. Shradha Haria, ladies and gentlemen. Shradha Haria from Australia. It was a pleasure. Thank you all for listening, and make sure to follow Shradha on social media. I'm going to upload the links. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Goodbye.
Pleasure. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this interview, and please subscribe my YouTube channel. For you, it's a one click. For me, it means the possibility to continue creating impact in the world with those videos. Thank you, and see you soon.